Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you all to the IAU South African Sisters Student Committee's first event for this Awareness Month. I trust everyone is well, alhamdulillah. My name is Sadika and I'll be your host for this webinar. A hadith related to today's topic is highlighted in the final sermon of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he stated, "O people, it is true that you have certain rights with regard to your women, but they also have rights over you. Do treat your women well and be kind to them, for they are your partners and committed helpers." Before we begin with the discussion, I'd like to explain what an IOU student committee is. So, this is a voluntary group of current and past students located in similar geographical locations whose aim is to spread awareness about Islam and IOU, founded by Sheikh Bilal Phillips. IOU aims to grant global access to quality tertiary education for students at virtually no cost. Each degree incorporates fundamental Islamic principles and can be conducted completely virtually. So, student committees across the world host events during our semi annual awareness months with the hope of achieving IOU's main mission, which is to change the Muslim nation and world situation through appropriate education. The topic of today's webinar deals with unveiling Islamic feminism, which will be conducted by Sheikh Mohammed West. For those listeners who are unaware of who Sheikh West is, he was born in Cape Town, South Africa, but eventually moved to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. He pursued a bachelor's degree in Islamic sciences at the University of Medina, whilst concurrently pursuing a degree in accounting through the University of South Africa. Sheikh was returned to Cape Town in 2011 and is currently a practicing chartered accountant at Woolworths Holding Limited. He is the resident Imam at Burhanul Masjid in Puka, based in Cape Town. He is also an international speaker for Al Kauthar Institute and is the Western Cape Regional Director of the Imam Development Program. Sheikh Wish joined IOU in 2018 as the university's financial director. He then joined senior management in 2020 and is currently serving as IOU's interim deputy vice chancellor of admin. If you have any questions for Sheikh, please post them to the YouTube chat live box. Alhamdulillah, I'm sure everyone is keen to hear what insights Sheikh Wis is planning to share with us today regarding the topic. So without further ado, I'll hand the mic over to Sheikh Wist. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Wist, and I welcome you to our live event.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sister, and to all the listeners and those for joining us. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Shukran so much for having me. So without further ado, inshallah, I'll be ready to start our topic.
Yes, I stopped sharing, so if Sheikh wants to present any slides, you are.
I think you should just make me a host. I'm not able to share at the moment. It still says it's disabled for me to share. Okay, I'm the host now. Let's see. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Once again, I hope I greet all of you and I hope you're well. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finds you are found in goodness, that for all those going through difficulty and hardship and sickness, may Allah grant shifa'ah, wherever you are in the world, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant ease and blessings. And in a particular mention to our students, for those thinking of joining IOU, well, mashallah, what a wonderful place IOU is. And in the times that we live in, before we get into our topic, I think it's just proper that I mention in the times that we live in, times of fitna, times of challenges, the best source of assistance after the guidance of Allah is knowledge. And of the first lessons we as people learned all the way back when Nabi Adam alayhi salam was created was the importance and the power of knowledge. When the angels didn't know, but Nabi Adam knew, and Allah made the angels to prostrate before Nabi Adam. That knowledge will always be that blessing that will elevate you, will always be that blessing that will bring you success. It will grant you prosperity in this life and the next. And so any opportunity of learning is an opportunity of honor. And Allah says in the Quran that He elevates the people of Iman and the people of knowledge, darajat, many levels. Money, power, these things don't mean much in the sight of Allah, but knowledge means a lot. And it's the one blessing that you cannot, just think about it, you can acquire other blessings almost for free. You can inherit a fortune from your parents. You didn't work a single day, but you inherited it. You can even inherit a country. Kings, they give it to their sons. Their sons didn't work a single day, but they become the king tomorrow. Whereas knowledge no one gets a single bit of knowledge except with effort. Allah makes sure that every single person starts with zero. You start as a baby, not even knowing how to speak. And so knowledge is this thing that Allah only parts with when you put effort into it. And Alhamdulillah, the Islamic University, the International Open University, IOU, is committed to educating people across the world and people who have the desire to learn, not just Islamic sciences, but the dunya sciences as well. Irrespective of where you are or how little your means are, we will inshallah do our best to bring the knowledge to you. And I thank the student committees who are volunteer organizations and associations for doing this and sacrificing of your time. Allah reward your efforts. It is a great, inshallah, sadaqatul jariyah to you and your family. So please keep up the good work. Inshallah, our topic this afternoon or late morning here in South Africa is Islamic Feminism Unveiled. And it's part of a much larger series that we did on gender. We know here in South Africa, August is Women's Month. And the issue of sisters and how Islam treats women is always an area of, I'd say, controversy. I mean, we see what's happening in Afghanistan. Allah help that country. And the first question that people asked, are women's rights going to be taken away? We hear you're going to implement the Sharia, as per the understanding of certain groups. And that Sharia, and what that means is women are going to be deprived of basic rights. She won't be able to educate herself. She won't be able to earn property. She won't be able to leave her home. Is this really what Islam says? Is this what Islam has done for women? And I ask this question for you sisters, Muslim, I'm not talking about non-Muslim women, Muslim sisters. Do you feel comfortable that if you were to live under the laws of the Sharia, that it would curtail your aspirations? It would take you backwards? Or is it something that would elevate you and honor you? And I think today I'd like to answer that question very, very emphatically. Is my screen being shared? Can we see it? The slides?
Yes, Sheikh.
Okay. So, question, does Islam oppress women? And I think as Muslims, it's a question that lingers with you if you haven't studied. If you haven't studied Islamic knowledge, you might just say, of course not, because I'm a Muslim, I can't say that it oppresses women. But there might be a lot of lingering questions as to certain things within the Sharia. Why can he marry 4 wives? Why can he just talaq me without saying anything? Why do I have to cover myself in a certain way? Can I work? All those kind of questions linger, you're asked this. And I, subhanAllah, as growing up as a young person, in fact, one of the reasons why I studied Islamic studies formally was because I was unsure as to what the Sharia really says regards to women. And I didn't want to be dependent on an imam. I wanted to understand it for myself. And subhanAllah, it is one of the areas we should take a great deal of pride in terms of what the Sharia has done for our sisters. And so let's compare Islam, we do a before and after picture. What is the world like outside, before Islam, before the advent of Islam, or before the revelation of the Quran, before the Sharia came? What was it like to be a woman in society in other parts of the world? So she was seen as, and this is in Arabia, her rights pre-Islam, this is now in Arabia, specifically in Jahiliyyah. She was seen as definitely subhuman, and she was basically like an animal. Women were inherited, she was bought, she was sold, like you would buy and sell camels. She was seen as property, and she was treated like that. And that is why in the Quran, Allah actually reveals an ayah saying, oh people, it is haram for you to inherit women karhan. You cannot inherit women. Why? Because when a man would die in Jahiliyyah, so a brother would die, he would leave behind his money, his camels, and his wives. So you had 10, 20 wives. They would all be sitting lined up like the camels, and the heirs, the brothers, the nephews, they would come and they would look at the wives and say, this one is nice, I'm going to take her for me. And that is how women were inherited in Jahiliyyah. Now just imagine that concept. This is what a woman was like in Jahiliyyah. She could not own any property. As a woman, you couldn't own any property. You yourself were property. And she lived entirely under the control of a man. Either her father or her husband or her sons would dictate her entire comings and goings of her life. There were no rules with regards to marriage. There was no limit how many wives you could take. If you married a woman, what should you do, what you could do, what you couldn't do. Those things were not, there was no contract and there was no legislation. So a man had complete authority over a woman. And again, think about you living in some society where there wasn't even an SPCA or animal rights, and you had a camel. You could do that camel what you want. You rode it as much as you want. You could feed it as little as you wanted. You could even slaughter that camel, and women were basically like this. And I mean, as the height of it shows that they were not even entitled to life. That we know that in Jahiliyyah, women were, baby girls were buried alive. Allah speaks about this when Allah says, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى, that when the news is brought to one of them of a female, ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ, his face becomes darkened and he's filled with grief and anger and sorrow. And he decides with shame, he hides himself from his people because of the bad news. So he's humiliated that he has a baby girl. And then he contemplates, what should he do? Shall he retain her? Must he keep her out and in humiliation? Or should he bury her alive? And then Allah says, "Ala sa'a ma yahkumun." What an evil decision, deliberation he was making. Now, if you have the question, besides for the emotional, disturbance that you get for a father to take his newly born baby daughter and put her in a ground and bury her alive, I mean, that's terrible. The fact that society did not stop this, the fact that society didn't see this as something wrong, this fact that no one could petition and say, look, you can't do this as another human being, it showed you how little value and the rights she had within her society. So this is before Islam, okay? So again, the question we're going back to is Islam something that honored women? It brought women forward. It was a force of good, or was it a force of bad for women? Okay. And as this is the ayah said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la yahillu lakum an tarithu nisa karhan. Allah says again, oh, you who believe, do not inherit women out of compulsion, and do not make difficult for them in order to take back their dowries. So Allah is clearly speaking to the society of the Arabs of how to, of certain of their practices is completely not in line with Islam. Now, one might say, you know what? Okay, fair enough. Jahiliyyah Arabs were crazy, and that's why they called Jahiliyyah, Abu Jahl and all those people. Don't compare Islam to Jahiliyyah Arabia. We all know that they were barbarians. But when many people would say that if you compare Islam to Christian or Jewish sources, or the civilization, the Judeo-Christian civilization, then surely the Judeo-Christian civilization is far more advanced and far more progressive than Islam when it comes to women's rights. And of course, even beyond that, they would say Western civilization, which is not really based on religion, is even further progressive. So we want to compare Islam to Jahiliyyah, and we say clearly Jahiliyyah is really insane. And that is, there's no comparison. Islam is a force for good compared to Arabia. Now we compare Islam to Christianity and Judaism. And then we'll compare it to Western feminism. So let's look at what was a woman within Christianity. And this is in Deuteronomy, the second or third book of the Bible, and it says, if a man happens to meet a virgin, so a man, he comes across a virgin girl who is not engaged to be married, and he rapes her, and then this is discovered, then the man, the rapist, shall pay her father 50 silver coins, and the man, the rapist, must marry this woman who he has violated her, and he can never divorce her as long as he lives. SubhanAllah. So if a man rapes you and you're a virgin, then you must marry the rapist. I mean, there's no discussion as to, you will just be married and your father will be compensated for you being violated. And so again, we see this is in the Bible. This is a verse in the Bible, and the reference is there. You can open the Bible and it's there. And so you can see the ideology here is that you are a property. You are something which your father would have bartered. Your father would have exchanged you as his daughter for something else. And now that you are used, you are damaged goods, the rapist needs to compensate him. You use the property, so you need to pay for it. And so subhanAllah, I mean, the verse says itself, it speaks for itself. In Leviticus, which is one of the books of the Old Testament, during her menses, it says, anything she lies on during her menses will be unclean. So if she lies on the bed, the whole bed becomes unclean. And anything she sits on will be unclean. The chair will be unclean. And anyone who then touches the bed will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and they must bath with water, and they will still be unclean for at least until the evening. So during your haid, a lady is seen as being herself as dirty and nothing. She should therefore be sort of locked away in a room, because wherever she goes, she contaminates everything that is around her. Okay. One might say, well, that was the Old Testament. The Old Testament was, had its issues. We are now following the New Testament, which is far more progressive. Now we go to the New Testament. This is what Saint Paul, Paul the Apostle, who wrote basically the majority of the New Testament. He says, a woman should learn in complete quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have any authority over a man. She must be quiet. For Adam was created first and then Eve. And Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. And so in Christianity in particular, particularly in Christianity, you would find that there's a lot of baggage put on Eve and on women as being spiritually deficient. Because, and if you study a little bit about Christianity, and you should know this, we live as South Africans, we live in a Christian majority country. As a side note now, the basis of Christianity is this. This is to sum up what Christianity is. Christianity basically says that God created Adam and Eve, and they were pure, and then Eve committed sin and she deceived her husband, and so they both committed sin. They ate from the tree, and when they did that, their souls became stained. This sin wasn't just a sin like we understand in Islam, that you have a sin on your book and you make tawbah and it gets removed. No, this sin sort of contaminated their souls, both Adam and Eve. And their children born from them inherited the sin. So even if you were born and you committed no sin, every sin, that's why you in Christianity were born into sin, meaning that every single human being is born a sinner. And this sin can't be removed. No matter how much tawbah, istighfar, charity, fasting you do, you can never ever free yourself of the stain of sin. And you're going to Jahannam for that. Every single person must go to hell eternally because of that sin. You say like what's up? How do I then? I'm born and being condemned to hell for a sin that I didn't do. Adam and Eve did it, and now I'm going to hell. What should I do? I said, well, the only way is someone must pay for the sin. Someone must be sacrificed for the sin. And so God, in his mercy, he made himself into a man to be born as Jesus, and he killed himself for himself to forgive that sin. And that is basically, so that is Christianity in a nutshell. So everything comes down to this original sin, and Eve was the one who did that original sin. And so there's this great guilt as a woman that your gender is responsible for that. And this is the Christian, this is not Judaism, this is Christianity. Still continuing with Christianity, and from the words of Paul, and he says, for a woman, now we talk about hijab, in Islam, there's a lot of this heated discussion that this hijab is in the Quran and Islam is backwards, she must wear hijab. Look at what the Bible says. The Bible says, for if a woman does not cover her head, she might as well have her hair cut off. We should shave her head. But if it is a disgrace for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head to be shaved, then she should cover her head. So basically, Paul is saying, you either cover your hair, sisters, or we shave your head. And then he says, as for a man should not cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God. There's the concept that we are created in the image of God. But woman is the glory of man. For man did not come from woman, but a woman came from a man. And neither was the man created for a woman. So men were not created for you, sisters. You were created for us. And so you need to be subservient to us, whereas we are subservient to God. And so this is the philosophy. This is the Christian philosophy with regards to women. And so this is what's in the Bible. The Bible as you'd find it today. And even as late as, so we might say, well, Christianity, as we know, it evolves, and it is true. They do have councils, and they change the Bible, and they change the belief system. And that's a different discussion altogether. But we find even as late as the 1600s, the 15th century, there was a council in France, an ecumenical council, the council of all the muftis and the priests of Christianity. And the question that they were asking for 2 days was, does a woman have a soul? Is a female a human being, or is she something else? She's not a man. Definitely she's not on the level of Adam, and she's on the level of people. So what is she? Is she an animal? Is she something in between? And so there was this whole discussion, does she even have a soul, up until about 300-400 years ago. And if we go further, I'm sorry, are there any questions? I prefer to take questions as we go along. Any questions?
I don't see anything in the YouTube chat box at the moment, Sheikh, but I will let you know once a question arises.
Or any comments from even the student council committee as well?
Okay, here's a question coming through. Isn't women's rights advocate better than this word feminism with evil origins and past? Please clarify.
Okay, very good, very good. I think I should have started off with that. The word feminism, I should have maybe started off with that. Is a heated word. It is a word that carries a lot of positive and negative connotations. And I think for marketing purposes, we deliberately use that word so we can clarify. But feminism, let's dissect the word feminism, and we'll talk about the feminist movement. We shouldn't be confused with feminism and the modern feminist movement as we find now. Certain words become hijacked by certain movements, and we forget feminism really is about the rights, as you say, a humanist, animalist. What does it mean? You are in favor of those things and you want to preserve those things. So we are in favor of the rights of women within the Sharia. We do not take away from her rights, nor do we give her more than what the Sharia is saying. And that is why I'd say Islam is actually it's feministic in the sense that it is in promotion of the rights of women. The final sermon that Nabi Sallallahu gave, in fact, the very, very last public advice he gave was as-salah, as-salah, wa ma malakat aymanukum. Look after your salah and look after the women in your care, the family members in your care. And so when we say, what is feminism? If you understand feminism to mean that that there's complete gender equality, that gender is something which is neutral, it is fluid, then of course we disassociate ourselves from that kind of understanding. But feminism in the context of really linguistically, what does feminism mean? Linguistically, it speaks about giving women their rights and advocating for the rights of women. And that is what the Sharia does. So let us not dispute around terminologies. We don't dispute of terminology. If you find the word feminism offensive and you want to use the word advocacy of women, but clumsy, then okay. But we'll talk about the feminist movement and when we say Islamic feminism, what do we talk about? When they say feminism, what do they talk about? Sister Sadiqa, to add something?
So I'm very shocked at looking at your slides and realizing how other faiths view women, because I did think that to a certain extent women were treated as more than objects, but it makes me appreciate how the Quran was revealed and came to liberate women in that sense and give her rights and protect her from any societal stigma. Alhamdulillah.
And this is really the purpose of this discussion. It is not so much for people outside. We first have us as Muslims to understand what our religion gave. And then when we're done here, I hope you're like mind blown to say, I can't believe what the Sharia did was it was light years ahead of any civilization. So we compared Islam, we saw what women were like in the time of Jahiliyyah, the Arabs. Okay, that was just insane. You buried your daughters alive. Then we looked at the Judeo-Christian philosophies, and we said, well, women were really seen as they were sub men. They were definitely less than men. And the Sharia, the Jewish Sharia, the Khalaqa, the Sharia, is very, very strict with regards to women and how to interact with women, and she's really objectified. And then you look at the Christian philosophy, and we see there's a spiritual issue there. Maybe they're not so strict because Christianity in general doesn't have a very extensive Sharia. What you wear and eat and drink, these things are very fluid. But when it came to the spirituality of women, there's a lot of baggage put on them. So now people would say, but we're talking 2,000 year, rabbis and priests leave them. We are living in the modern secular age. Let's compare your Islam to the secular world. Now, let's go to European laws. And this is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. It says, in the Roman law, which is really the foundational Greek and Roman law, this is the common law. Even in South Africa, you still have the common law. A lot of it is taken from Roman law. A woman was, even in historical times, completely dependent. If married, she and her property passed into the power and ownership of her husband. The wife was the purchased property of her husband. And like a slave acquired only for his benefit. This is Roman law, right? And European law is based on this. A woman could not exercise any civil or public office. She couldn't run to be a mayor or anything like that. Could not be a witness in a case. Could not be surety in a contract, a tutor, a curator. She could not adopt or be adopted or make a will or a contract. She could not sign any legal documents. In legal terminology, a child can't enter into a legal contract. The child needs a guardian or something like that to ratify that contract. Women could never enter into contracts. And among the Scandinavian races, women were under the perpetual tutelage or basically care of a man until she was married, whether she was married or unmarried. So this is the basis of the common law under which women lived in. And let's keep going. And when we talk about feminism, so maybe this is a good part to jump to feminism as we understand it. So as we know, Europe was under a religious rule for a long time, and up until about 300-400 years ago, there was a revolution, the Enlightenment phase, and Europe broke from Christianity and it became secular. And its laws were based now on the laws of man and not anymore the Bible, because they found it incompatible with society. And so in the late 1800s, so we're talking 1870, 18, so what are we, 150 years ago, 150 years ago, women started partitioning, protesting the laws within Britain and in Europe. And they were demanding certain rights. And this is the beginning of feminism. The first feminism came in waves. Like the coronavirus comes in waves, feminism came in waves. The first wave, which happened just before the 1900s, before World War I or so, was women were protesting certain laws which they were unhappy about. For example, the right to own property. So up until 150 years ago, women could not own property in their own names. When they got married, their husbands owned their property. So if Aisha married, or let's say Samantha married Sam, and then Samantha's parents passed away, she could not take that property, use the property, sell it, unless her husband allowed her to do so. She couldn't divorce her husband, really. She couldn't even attend a university. So though we're talking about Europe 150 years ago, and we're going to get into the details, where I actually compare Islam to the Western rules. Now let's talk about Islam. What does Islam say about women? What is the religion? Now you saw the different philosophies. Let's look at from Islamic philosophy. The first thing Islam puts down categorically clear. Before we even talk about the Sharia and court cases and marriage, in her sight to Allah, spiritually, is there any inferiority between a lady and a man? That when you stand on the day of Qiyamah, are you going to get a point for being a man? Are you going to stand in a different queue? Is there a queue for men and a queue for women? How is it going to work? Allah says, "Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha," that whoever lives and does righteous deeds, lives a good life, whether you're a male or a female, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِن, and that person is a believer, فَلَنُحْيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا. Allah says, we'll surely give you a good life in this world. Allah says, I'll give you a good life. وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And we will surely give them a reward equal to the best that which they do, meaning in the akhirah. Allah says very explicitly in the Quran, whether you're a man or a lady, if you live a good life, Allah doesn't look at your gender. Allah looks at your heart and the kind of life you live. And if you're a good person, you will have Allah's blessings in this world, and He will give you success in the akhirah. Allah make us amongst them. Ameen. The spiritual equality before the sight of Allah, we are spiritually equal. And on the issue of Adam and Eve, and as I said, the Christians have a big issue on this because original sin, Eve was the cause of it. There is a saying, although it's not a true saying, they said the word evil comes from Eve because she invented sin. What does Islam say about who ate first? Even though for us it doesn't matter who ate first, because Allah forgave them. For us, sin is very different. Our concept of sin is very different to the Christian concept of sin. For us, people sin all the time. We sin continuously, and Allah forgives continuously. He doesn't need sacrifices. He doesn't need. All you need to do is raise your hands and say, "Oh Allah, forgive me," and Allah forgives you. That's the Islamic concept of sin. We are not, burdened by it all the time. We just make our tawbah and istighfar. Allah is beyond needing sacrifices. He forgives out of His mercy. But even on the point, if we just wanted to ask the question, who ate first? In all the ayat of the Quran, Allah always says the two of them ate, and the two of them sinned, and the two of them were forgiven. Allah doesn't point out one, except in Surah Taha, there kind of seems to be a bit of blame more on Adam. Allah says, فَأَكَلَا مِنْهَا. And the two of them ate from فَأَكَلَا, meaning two of them, the two of them ate from it. فَبَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا. And then the two of them became naked. وَتَفِقَا يَخْصِفَانِ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ وَرَقِ الْجَنَّةِ. And the two of them began to cover themselves with the plant, the leaves of Jannah. But then Allah says, وَعَصَى آدَمُ رَبَّهُ فَغَوَى. And it was Adam who disobeyed his Lord and committed the sin. So this ayah actually is the closest thing that we have that appears to say perhaps it was Nabi Adam that was the first that committed the sin. Although, as we said, both of Allah forgave them, and so the sin does not exist anymore. The one who committed sin, at-taibu min ad-dambi kaman la dhanba lah. We know the hadith. The one who Allah has pardoned his sin, it's as if though he had not committed the sin anymore. And so Allah forgave the two of them. But this ayah, if we just were to be technical, it would appear that Nabi Adam, Allah says Adam was the one who disobeyed his Lord. Any questions on this juncture before we continue?
There is a question, but it's not specifically related to the slide. But there is a
No?
question asking, is women or are women allowed to study with men in the same class if you're at university or at a college or at school? From an Islamic point of view, this person would like an answer.
It's a good question. So let's so that's actually it leads into where we're going now. So we said, okay, in terms of spirituality, Allah does not discriminate between genders. You will have many men and women that enter Jannah bidnillah, and many men and women will enter Jahannam, not because of their gender, but because of the life that they lived. Allah will look at your heart and not look at your gender. Then we talk about the Sharia. Now, what is the Sharia? And it's important to understand what the Sharia is. The Sharia is the divine law of living on the dunya as prescribed in the Quran and the teachings of the Nabi and the Sunnah. Right? So the Sharia, the Islamic law, if we lived in an Islamic country, the Sharia would be what was implemented in terms of what you can eat, what you can't eat, how to get dressed, how you, if you enter into a contract with somebody, when you get married, all this is a part of interaction between you and society. So what are the rights the Sharia came to bring? If we talk about the Sharia as a constitution, what are the rights it gave women? So the Sharia gives certain rights to men, certain rights to husbands, certain rights to women, certain rights to the elders, to parents, to children. What do women get? Now remember, where the Sharia came before the Sharia, Jahiliyyah, women were inherited, they were buried alive. What was happening in Rome? And remember that Roman slide we gave, that was the Romans were ruling the world at that time. We know what the Christians were doing. Now, from the Islamic perspective, when the Prophet ﷺ came with the Quran, number one, we gave her the right to live, right? The right to life, which is perhaps the first thing in most constitutions, that you cannot kill your daughters, you cannot kill your wives. If you murder her, then like the penalty of murdering any other man, you will be found guilty, right? So you have the right to live. The right, no one can take her life without. See, we take these things for granted, but in other societies, pre-Islam, you didn't have the right to live. Your life was dependent on your husband. It decided how long you should live. We said no. The Sharia gives you the right to life, the right to choose her own religion. Subhanallah. When Allah says la ikraha fi din, that there is no compulsion in religion, every human being has the right to choose which faith you want. We're not saying that there's no consequences to that in terms of the akhirah. Of course, you choose wrongly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold you accountable. But I can't force my daughters and my wife into a religion. I can advise them, I can encourage them, but at the end of the day, the right to choose your faith is something which Allah has given every human being. Every human being can choose their own faith. When it comes to court cases, she has an equal standing with that of a man. And we have many examples in the Sharia where women laid, they came to the Nabi Sallam, they claimed against a brother or a father, a husband, and vice versa. Women are seen as equal plaintiffs within a courtroom. We give women the equal opportunity to push forward. What is one of the most amazing things about the Sharia, and one of the reasons why women are still, even in Western societies, oppressed and is a segment of society that is vulnerable, is because she is economically vulnerable. That if you are poor or you have someone has a higher privilege than you financially, then it's easy for them to exploit you. The Sharia, undoubtedly, this is one area you cannot dispute. It really enriched women, where it gave her the right to her own property. That after the Sharia came, it says, whatever a woman owns, no one can touch her wealth. Not her husband, not her parents. If you worked in a job and you earned a salary, nobody can take of your money without your permission. If you inherited something from your parents, you own that property. Your husband, your children can't take any of that property. And you can use it if you want to spend it on shoes, if you want to donate it to the masjid, if you want to give it to your kids. That is for you and you alone. No one can force you in making a decision what belongs to you. You have the right, as we know, many hadith about choosing your own spouse. You need to ask the girl, does she want to get married to this man? Even if the father really wants you to marry this guy and you say no, cannot force you. Haram. You have the right to determine your marriage contract. You can say what my dowry must be, what my nafaqah is going to be, if you can take a second wife, how to get divorced. All these things the Sharia has allowed you, oh sister, to put that in your contract. Many sisters don't know this. That's why they're vulnerable. The Sharia has given you the opportunity to do that. She has the right, as we said, maintenance from her husband. She doesn't have to support her husband. Husband has to support her. Even if he does not, even if she's working, right? And she earns money, but she does not want to use any of her money in the household, he still has to do. That's his job. That's what the Sharia has said. Um, from the marriage contract, a lady has the right, subhanAllah, and I don't think there's no law in the world, no matter how progressive you are, no Western society says this, no other religions, a woman, sisters, you have the right to sexual fulfillment in your marriage contract, meaning it's grounds for divorce. You can divorce your husband. You can take him to the MJC or the Jamiat and say, look, my husband, I want to divorce him. Why do you want to divorce him? He's a good guy, he nafakas me, everything, but sexually I'm not fulfilled. My needs as a woman is not being fulfilled by this man. And on that grounds, if he can't fulfill his job, you have the right of divorce. Now, subhanAllah, look at this fatwa of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. Ibn Taymiyyah was asked by someone, what is more important? As a husband, I need to give her financial needs. I need to give her sexual needs. Which of these things are more important for me to fulfill? And look at his fatwa. He said, it is more important for a husband to fulfill the sexual needs of his wife than even feeding her. Why? Because her father can feed her brother can feed her, but you're the only man on earth that can fulfill those needs. And if you can't do the job, then subhanAllah, someone else must do it. You need to divorce the lady and she must find someone else, right, to do the job. So, I mean, imagine the law tells you can divorce your husband if he does not please you in the bedroom, right? It goes both ways, obviously. A man can also do that, but look at the rights the Sharia is giving you. This is something you'd think you'd only find in Cosmo magazine, divorce him if he's not pleasing you, if he can't do the job, let him be replaced. You wouldn't find it even in the laws in the West. You have the right to end the marriage. The Sharia has given you multiple avenues how you as a system can end the marriage. Your share of inheritance, as we know, is defined. In the past, women were being inherited. The Sharia has given you an inheritance. That is, Allah has not, subhanAllah, sisters, look at this. Allah has not said how many rak'ahs they must be for Maghrib or Fajr or Isha. That's not in the Quran. But He specifically mentioned the share of every type of woman, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a wife. Allah doesn't mention so much the men. It's just sort of taken as the double of that in most cases. But Allah has prescribed for a woman is so much for this, for that. Why? Because this was something He wanted to make sure is preserved, that men understood the share for a sister must be given. And this is the question the sister asked, my education at university. She has the right to be educated and access the masjid. Now, I give you a beautiful story. In the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how were the women being educated? Did they attend the masjid or not? We know the hadith is very clear. It might be different in certain parts of South Africa, but the hadith is very clear. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, authentic hadith, do not forbid your women from attending the masjid. Even though it's better for you, O sister, to make salah at home, the Nabi says to the men, do not forbid her. If she wants to come to the masjid, let her come. And Aisha said, now remember, the wives of the Nabi Sallam are the most sacred of women. They should not be moving around. She says that the waqt that you would find most women in the masjid was Fajr and Isha. Fajr and Isha, why? Because these were dark. And so many women came out to perform salah in Fajr and Isha. Moreover, did they just perform salah? And we'll ask, how did they sit? What was the seating arrangements in the masjid? So remember, there was no upstairs or downstairs. There was no partition in the masjid. The men stood in front in the first couple of sufuf, then there was a gap, and then the ladies stood behind them in the sufuf behind the men. And the men obviously started filling the masjid from the front closest to the imam. The ladies began filling the masjid from the back. And so, as you know, the later you came as a man, you were close to the women, and the later you came as a woman to the masjid, you were close to the men. And the Nabi said, these two sufuf are the not the worst, but he means the least rewarded of the sufuf that are closest to each other. And there was no partition, right? So there's no barrier between a curtain between the men. This is in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Were there only, and then we know that when the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised when the men made sujood or ruku, the lady should wait. So when the men come up from sujood, the lady should stay in sujood until a second or two, so that nothing is exposed. Sometimes you come up from sujood and something gets exposed, so the ladies don't see that. And then also at the end of the salah, the Nabi told the men, don't turn around. Let the ladies first leave the masjid, give them a minute or two to leave the masjid, and then the men can leave the masjid. And then, was it only salah? What about classes? Did the Nabi give classes, and were there women? Yes, they were. And subhanAllah, one of my favorite stories of the sunnah, of the Sharia, of the Nabi's biography, the seerah, is how he got a mimbar. What's a mimbar? I don't know, sometimes in Sadiqa, which city are you in?
Cape Town, Sheikh.
Oh, okay, so you would know. So many sisters, unfortunately, in Johannesburg and Durban might never have attended a masjid, and they don't even know what a mimbar is. A mimbar, as you would know, is the pulpit, the steps, the 3 steps the imam stands on when he gives his khutbah, okay? So where did this thing come from? Did we always have a mimbar? Did the Nabi Sallallahu have one made when he gave his Jummah? Before he had a mimbar, the Nabi Sallallahu had a palm tree. There was a palm tree in the masjid. And he would stand against the palm tree and he would give khutbah like that. And he would give classes like that. And then as time went on and more people became Muslim, the men, of course, increased and the ladies increased. Now, what happens to the ladies? Shame. The poor ladies are being pushed further and further behind until a time came, there was no microphones and things like that, where one auntie, she stands up and she says, Ya Rasulullah. And again, she's speaking in the masjid in front of all the men. And there's no problem. She raises her hand and she says, Ya Rasulullah, we ladies can't see you anymore. We can't even hear you. You're so far away. Can I have a pulpit made for you? I have a slave who's a carpenter. I can build you a mimbar, a platform, 3 steps. You stand up. Now, because you're elevated, we can all see you. So the Nabi said, this is a good idea. He liked the idea. And so a few days later, the lady came and she brought this pulpit. And the Nabi Sallallahu ascended the steps. Also, one of the things she said, Ya Rasulullah, can we have a special class with you, ladies only class? And the Nabi Sallallahu said, yes, no problem. So the ladies were allowed to attend the masjid. It was because of a lady that we had a mimbar. Now, just to conclude the story, how beautiful the story is. So the Nabi Sallallahu now, the first day, he's giving a lecture on his new mimbar. He starts climbing the steps. After 3 steps, he faces the Jama'ah. He's about to give a lecture. The Sahaba say, we heard a weird sound in the masjid, something really strange. We couldn't understand what the sound is, something out of the ordinary. And everyone's looking, where's the sound coming from? And so the Nabi Sallallahu walks down the mimbar again, and he goes to the palm tree, and the tree is crying. The palm tree, there's a hadith, authentic hadith, narrated by a number of Sahaba, they were there in the masjid. The sound was coming from the tree because Nabi Sallallahu had left him. And so the Nabi Sallallahu hugged the tree and said to him, and the hadith is, you washwishuhu, like a child, you washwishuhu. The tree was crying like a baby. And he was saying to the tree, quiet now, you're disturbing the Jama'ah, and don't worry, you're going to be my tree in Jannah. I haven't left you. And so, as one Imam keeps saying, and subhanAllah, I agree with him, this is the first documented tree hugger in history, was Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where he actually hugged the palm tree and he said, don't worry about it. You will be my tree in Jannah. And the Sahaba also mentioned, soon after the Prophet passed away, that specific palm tree in the front of the masjid died, and they buried that palm tree. So it's a tree for the Nabi Sallallahu in Jannah. But the point is the fact that the ladies were allowed in the masjid, they were allowed to communicate with the Nabi Sallallahu. The Sahaba were there, and in fact, the reason why we have a mimbar was to accommodate our sisters in terms of their lecturing and their learning. And we know that the hadith about that the right of learning of education is for every single system, for every single person, man and lady. And when we talk about education, the sister asked specifically about university. We all know that the very first university in the world, 859, right, 1,000 years, before many of the other European universities were even invented, were even established, was established by a sister, Fatima al-Fihri. The first university on earth was established by a sister, let alone being allowed to study. It was ladies who established the university. I hope that explained the answer emphatically and clearly. Yeah.
I understood the answer, Sheikh. There is another question, if Sheikh doesn't mind me asking right now.
Go ahead.
Can Sheikh please elaborate on women having equal rights as men in court? As far as I know, it requires that 2 women take the place of 1 man as a witness.
So that is one area of controversy. Yes, there is only one ayah in the Quran. Now remember, when we talk about court cases, there are different types of court cases. When a woman testifies to a murder, for example, we don't ask, do you have 2 witnesses? When a woman testifies to any criminal kind of thing, then a woman and a man is equal. The only area the Sharia says that they need 2 women instead of a man, two women equals to 1 man, is the last chapter, the last few ayat of Surah Baqarah, which is talking about debt. When you sign an agreement, when 2 people enter into a debt agreement, a loan, there you need a witness. And so the Sharia says you need 2 women. There's a lot of controversy around, so we accept that. That's the Sharia law. Why did the Sharia make it that when you sign a debt contract, you need 2 women instead of 1 man? One of the reasons could be that women at that time were economically not involved in the finances, so it was an area out of their expertise. And also, it's important to understand that in areas where women were taken as being more authoritative, like breastfeeding and those kind of areas, women's testimony was more important than that of a man. So the Sharia also understands that. The Sharia looks and says, look, in our day and age, this was pre-Islam, and even today, economically, men are privileged, and so men are able to, and you find in the workforce, even in modern companies, that women's rights economically are not, it's vulnerable. And so in areas of debt, the Sharia said to strengthen a lady's voice, we added with a second voice. Okay, now you must not use that one example and put it in all the context of every court case. When Aisha radiallahu anh gives us a hadith, the Nabi said so and so and so, and the Prophet did that and that, do we ask her, where's your second witness? Oh, Aisha, you can't give a testimony just as one of you. And then she's talking about Allah and the religion and Aqidah. It is only in the case of debt that the Sharia speaks about having two witnesses. Some have extended it to wills, maybe, that when you have a will and it must be signed, you need two witnesses. It doesn't specify the gender. A nikah contract, it doesn't specify the gender. And so it's only this one area of the Sharia where it is debt that a lady needs a second witness to bolster her. And this is not a witness in the sense of I saw something happening and I'm giving my testimony. No, witness to the contract. You need to be part of that contract. We're saying in a debt contract, you need two females and not one man and two females, or two men. That's the only contract we're talking about. Going back to the question on education, I think, sister, undoubtedly it's permissible for you to go to the university and to be educated there. You just need to practice the right kind of segregation, and the segregation that we see from the Prophet's masjid, that you should not be sitting beside and next to men, right? So you need to find a spot where it's just, girls around you, and that's permissible, that's fine. And of course, the interaction, how you interact needs to be looked at. And that's, subhanAllah, that is, you understand that when you go to the shop, when you go to the mall, when you go to the hospital, you have the same kind of issue. You're allowed to go to all these places. And sometimes, some societies have taken all her rights away. A right to medication, a right to education, a right to having a job. Why? Fitna, 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 fitna. You've taken the one aspect and made it sort of a rubber stamp across everything. And then you have denied her the right to live a productive life because this over-exaggerated concept of fitna. It's real, fitna is real. And, subhanAllah, fitna is even now on your phones and your houses. And so we should be in moderation in the way we see things from an Islamic perspective. The Sharia, even, subhanAllah, sisters, gives you the right to vote and pledge. There's an ayah in the Quran, Surah Mumtahina, where Allah speaks about when a lady comes to the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to give her vote of allegiance, then he should take their vote. Now, in Europe, in America, women were only allowed to vote in less than about 100 years now, right? So Islam, 1,400 years, gave women the right to choose her political leadership. But when a new Khalifa was established, and sometimes they would consult, it would be women as well that would be consulted. When the Nabi conquered Mecca, he consulted, he had a day where he spoke to the men and a day where he gave the pledge to the ladies, politically speaking to them. And he said, I'm your leader, and do you support me? And the lady said, yes. And of course, if you didn't support him, you had the right to not to support him. The Sharia also is equal in its punishment. If a man did a sin, he gets the same punishment as a lady. We don't give more or less, which shows that we see you as equals under the law. And on top of that, the Sharia gives you, sisters, extra benefits that it does not give men in certain areas. So there are things that as sisters, you must acknowledge that the Sharia gives you certain things that it doesn't give men, like a dowry, for example. It gives you the right of custody. When husband and wife gets divorced, the woman has primary custody. It gives you, the right to that nafaqah must be for you. Of course, there are certain things which men have, again, that ladies don't. And so it's not exactly the same, but there is equality and equity in the Sharia. And the last point I want to make, sisters, this concept of a wali. What's a wali? And the concept, not a spiritual wali. What is the context of a wali? Where do you see this coming up a lot in marriages? The father says, I make the imam wakil. And what's happening here? Well, what's a wali? What is the purpose of a wali? Anyone answer a question?
The wali would be the guardian of a woman when she wants to get married.
What does it mean to be the guardian? What is the guardian supposed to do or not do?
I think the guardian should ensure that the woman's rights are protected.
Exactly. Now, we only see this in the marriage, in a nikah. But it's not just to the nikah, it's with all these things. The wali, people have assumed the wali to be someone which controls the woman. I can't get married without his permission. He controls me. No. What the Sharia is saying, that in the time of Jahiliyyah, we didn't have courtrooms and we didn't have, police and all these things. So the Sharia, mashallah, tabarakallah, it gives you this wonderful set of rules. You have the right to love, the right to have property, the right to divorce your husband. But if there's no police there to protect you, what's going to happen? It's just words on paper. I mean, like South Africa, for example, we have a very beautiful constitution, but on the ground it's very different because the constitution is not being implemented. And so, Allah bless our country. There's a lot of good things in our country as well. I don't get confused, alhamdulillah. But back to our sisters, having a beautiful framework on paper that is not implemented on the ground is of no benefit or no substance. And so in addition to putting the laws down, Allah then said, I'm also going to make a man responsible for ensuring that these rights are fulfilled. That for every woman on earth, she has a wali. And if that woman's rights are harmed, her husband doesn't treat her well, her inheritance is not given, she's married without permission, she's not being divorced properly, her property, she's being harmed, not just her physically she's being harmed, emotionally she's being harmed. Allah is going to ask that man on the day of Qiyamah, where were you? If something happens to my children, Allah protect, or your children and they're minors, they're running the road and Allah protect, they get knocked over. Even if they ran and it was their fault, the court is still going to look at the parents. Where were you? You were negligent. And so the Sharia has also said, for every single woman on earth, there's going to be a male held accountable for a woman who was oppressed. Because Allah is going to ask that father, that husband, that brother, where were you when your sister, your daughter, was being insulted at work? She wasn't given a fair deal in her contract. Someone didn't pay her what was due to her. Where were you? And Allah is going to punish, or not punish, Allah is going to hold you liable, a wali, because you had the responsibility of amana. And that's why, brothers, when you get married, you are saying to her father, Qabiltu, oh father, I am taking the amana as the wali. Today, oh uncle, you've been looking after Aisha for the last 25 years. MashaAllah, you cared for all her needs and you stood as her guardian. Today, I will take that responsibility on in the sight of Allah. And I will be even better than you in caring for her, protecting her, making sure her rights are fulfilled. And therefore, it is of the biggest treachery and the biggest sin for the wali to be the one that does the oppression. When you are the guardian, you are the one that is meant to protect. And as they say in the very well-known saying, that the guard is always, the thing being guarded by the guard, by the protector, is more valuable than the one than one doing the protecting. So how bad is it if you are? I mean, how bad is it if the police is the one that steals? How bad is it if you, as the husband who is meant to protect your wife, you are the one causing the abuse? So Islam has also added this further concept to add a wali, that he is responsible to ensure the rights of the woman are protected. Any questions before we go on? I don't mind. I don't know if we have a time limit. I don't mind going on for another half an hour or so. And I want to talk about the modern feminist movement, how it evolved and how that compares to Islam. Any questions at this juncture?
I think Sheikh can continue for now, but I'll be sure to mention any questions that pop up.
So now I've given you sort of a synopsis in terms of the laws and the rules that the Sharia has given compared to other philosophies. Now let's talk about feminism. And I mean, this was the question people asked. The feminism, as we understand it today, is a movement that has come over the last 150 years. The history of feminism, as I said, about 150 years ago, there were certain inconsistencies within European law that women were not given her fair share of rights. In particular, it was about women who were widowed. When her husband passed away, she really didn't have much say about the estate. Women couldn't vote back in those days. There were certain professions she couldn't do. And so women began to agitate. This is in Europe. We want the right to educate ourselves, the right to have to own property and all these things. And so the first wave of the feminist movement, and in many of those things, those rights that the women of Europe were arguing for, Islam had already given our women 1,500 years ago. Many of those rights were things that, and I'm going to maybe give you the slide. Let me unshare and then share a new. I love this comparison. Can you see the Word document?
Yes, I can, Sheikh.
So this gives you a table as to when the feminist movement got certain rights. So as you can see, 1869 was really when the feminist movement started moving forward. And we then compare when Islam gave the first thing. 1869, the first time a woman attended Cambridge University. 1869, right? 150 years ago. The University of Qarawin in Morocco was started in 859 by Fatima al-Fihri, 1,000 years before women could attend Cambridge. A woman started a university in Morocco, a Muslim woman. Okay, 1870, the Married Women's Property Act allows married women to own her own property. For the first time, 1870 was the first time women could own their property in Europe. We know from the Quran, women from day one, if you inherit something, it belongs to you. If you earn something, it belongs to you. Your husband cannot open your bag, cannot open your account without your permission. But we know that you, sisters, you can do that. Hadith of Hind, the lady Hind came to the Nabi Sallallahu and she said, Ya Rasulullah Sallallahu, my husband Abu Sufyan, he doesn't give me maintenance as he should. Can I take from his money without his permission? SubhanAllah. And so the Prophet said, yes, you can, within moderation. Meaning, sisters, you can, hack, the right word to use. You can take your husband's Sharia compliant credit card. You can take his account, do an EFT without his permission, without his knowledge, if it is reasonable, if it is fair. But oh, brothers, you can't open a bag. You can't touch anything of a property. SubhanAllah. 1870 was the first time women could own their own property in Europe. Divorce, it says here, divorce heavily favored men, allowing the property. So a woman got married to a man. She comes with a huge fortune. Then she gets divorced. The husband takes her property. We say this is completely, Islam completely was against this kind of thing 1,400 years ago. In 1907, like 120 years ago, under the qualification, women could only then could women be elected on council. Women could only serve in public office 100 years ago. So a lot. For example, we look at what in Afghanistan now, and may Allah make it easy for that country. Europe is bashing a country that they've invaded many times over, and sort of speaking about laws and rules which should be implemented in a country. Yes, we agree, but they forget that it was only 100 years ago that women could actually be part of a government in the West. Okay, in Islam, Aisha radiallahu anha, we know in the time of Sayyidina Ali as his caliphate, Aisha had a political party. She had a political faction. Whether it was good or bad, it's a different discussion. But she presided over an army. The first civil war in Islam was really between Aisha and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anha, but she was the head of the army. So, from an Islamic perspective, for a woman to have political leadership, to run a political party, to govern, to be a mayor, to be the CEO of a company, no issue like this. The Sharia has no problem with these things. We might have an issue. A woman cannot be a Khalifa. She cannot be the Khalifa of the entire Muslim state, and she can't be an Imam in a masjid with a mixed congregation. Those are the two jobs. As a lady, you're disqualified because of your gender. But every other position within the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's consultation, he would have mashura with his wives. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, very famously, he would consult Hafsa, his daughter, whenever he had a political, a political or religious verdict to give. He would recognize Hafsa's leadership in that regard. We keep going. Women, as we said, only could vote 1918. We gave the ayah, Surah Mumtahana, where the Prophet says, O Prophet of Allah, when a believer woman comes to give her pledge of allegiance to you, pledge of allegiance means to vote. When she comes to vote, then you must accept that vote from her. So the ladies, you had the right to vote as prescribed in the Quran. The Quran gives you the right that you can vote. SubhanAllah, I find this very funny because I'm an accountant. It says in 1920 was the first time women were allowed to practice law and accountancy. We talk about, your Sharia, in certain cases, you have to have two witnesses. We say less than about 100 years ago, women could not practice law or accounting because these professions were seen as beyond ladies. Women are not capable of being lawyers or accountants. We have in the Quran, we know from the Sharia that the master copy of the Mus'haf, the first written copy of the Quran, was entrusted with Hafsa, the daughter of Sayyidina Umar. We said that, the Sahaba understood that there is no area of knowledge where ladies are inferior to men. Women can excel over men, when it comes to knowledge. It depends purely on those who work the hardest. The Matrimonial Cause Act makes grounds for divorce the same for women. So men and women were only given the ability to get divorced in 1923, 99, or less than 100 years ago in Europe. We know from the Sharia, very famous hadith, hadith of Thabit ibn Qais' wife, that a lady can buy herself out of her nikah through something called a khul'a. She also has the right of fasakh. She can go to the MJC, to the ulama, and say, look, I want to get divorced. My husband isn't doing his job, and they will annul the marriage. Also, sisters, something very important for you to know, and maybe if we have time, certain things you can put in your nikah contract. You have the right of tafweed talaq. Tafweed talaq means when you get married, the husband gets the 3 talaqs in his pocket, and he can use it when he wants to. If you put in your marriage contract that I would like 1, 2, or all of the talaqs to be given to me, and I am the one that exercises it, permissible. And this isn't something which is ajib or strange or modern. All the madhahib agree that the lady can ask for the right of talaq if she puts it in a marriage contract. So the Sharia gives you these avenues, but unfortunately, many times our sisters don't know these things. We have, 1956, the first time certain crimes of rape was actually found as illegal. For example, the Sexual Offences Act defines rape under specific criteria, such as incest, sex with a minor, no consent being given, sex when you are intoxicated, anal sex. These things were only described as being rape and molestation 70 years ago. Now, Europe wants to make it sound as if though the West wants to make it sound as if though we forever had these rules and the rest of the world is so backward. No, they were also just as backwards not too long ago. In Islam, we have a case of rape. There's a hadith about one incident that I know of a lady who was raped. And so what happened was she was coming from the masjid, right? She was coming from the masjid. It was dark. It was either after Fajr or after Isha. And someone passed her and he raped her. And so in the confusion, another man came to assist her and the rapist ran away. And so the man who came to assist her, he was arrested and he was accused of rape. And the lady said, yes, this is the man. And so the Nabi Sallallahu, the case was brought to the Nabi Sallallahu, and the punishment for rape is execution. SubhanAllah, the punishment of rape is execution. And so the man, even though he professed his innocence, eventually the Nabi Sallallahu listened to the testimony of the lady. The people who came to help her said, we only saw this guy. The Nabi Sallallahu found this guy, the innocent man, guilty, and he was about to be executed. And before he was executed, the rapist came forward and said, you know what, I committed rape. That was bad, but I can't let this man die on my behalf. I mean, if he gets executed, and I know that I'm a murderer. And so he confessed. And so the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam let the innocent, he spoke to him and apologized to him. As the hadith says, he said some nice words to him. And he let the man go. As for the attacker, he was stoned to death. The rapist was stoned to death, but we made istighfar. He made his tawbah. That's between him and Allah. And as for the lady, the Prophet also spoke to her, and she went. Now, question here. Did after that day, the Nabi said, from now on, sisters, better for you to make salah at home, and we're going to close the masjid for ladies now because it's a bit dangerous? No. Fitna, yes, fitna exists, but we don't close everything down because of that. And we had, even the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we had dangers, we had rapists, we had these things were real. And we see here also what's very important when we talk about sexual abuse. The lady gave mistaken testimony, but he didn't ask, where's your second witness? The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took her testimony and he sided with her, even though she was wrong, because her testimony was the strongest. It only took the testimony of the actual attacker for the Nabi to change his verdict. It also shows the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a human being, and he only judged according to what was in front of him. And if Allah did not give him guidance, wahi, then he wouldn't know, the unseen. This belongs to Allah. And so, and as we know, for us, more, again, for all of us, even the issue of rape, the penalty is severe. But even in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving if you make tawbah. The side note tangent. But the point is, we had all these things already in our Sharia many centuries before. Equal pay, that ladies, you have the right to earn a salary when you're breastfeeding your children, the right to earn an equal salary of a man. We know that the Quran mentions all these things. 1999, the House of Lords delivered a historic judgment in the Shah and Islam case, Muslim people. The women who fear gender persecution should be recognized as a refugee. So, subhanAllah, the sad reality, women are leaving Muslim countries to come to European countries because they're being persecuted. How terrible is that? How terrible is it? Even in South Africa, we have women going to the Constitutional Court asking the secular government, give us help, because we're not getting the help we need within our Muslim community or Muslim countries. It is the problem is not the Quran or the Sharia. The problem is men. We as men are not fulfilling our duties as husbands, as fathers. We are not giving our women the honor that she deserves. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَاشِرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, O men, live with him in goodness. When the Prophet ﷺ said, the last advice he says, well, be careful and be concerned about your salah. Look after your salah and look after your women. We are the problem as men. We are the problem why our sisters are fleeing Muslim countries, are fleeing our marriages, looking for secular courts to assist them, because husbands have not done their duties. We say qabiltu, we take the amana, ya Allah, I will look after this lady at the nikah, and then you are the one that she is crying over every night. She's the one that's, when you come home from work, she's scared, she's nervous because of you, she feels intimidated, she is harmed, she's abused by you, subhanAllah. How is this possible? Oh yeah, how is this possible that as men we are the perpetrators of the harm, when the Sharia has done so much to take her from being buried alive to allowing her now, subhanAllah, this is the before and after picture. Before the Prophet came, sallallahu, women were being buried alive. 20 years later, Aisha is leading an army. She's leading an army. People are giving Hafsa the only Quran on earth. We say, Hafsa, you are the most entitled person to that. Look at how the society changed within 20, 30 years. Sadly, we as Muslims are going back, where women are being bombed in their schools. Women are not allowed to attend the masjid. Women are not allowed to give fatwa. We know that the Sahaba, the ulama said that if all the knowledge was to put on one side and Aisha's knowledge is on the other side, then Aisha's knowledge would exceed. Would we, subhanAllah, I ask if Aisha radiallahu anha was here today, who narrated the most hadith, the fourth most narrated of hadith, would she even have a position on the fatwa committees of the world? Right? How have we gone so much in terms of sanctity of women when the Sahaba would look for Aisha for her fatwa? And so these problems we're finding in our society, it's got nothing to do with the Sharia, it's got to do with our implementation. We are not following the Sharia correctly. And we can continue on and on. So back to just feminism. So a lot of these laws, Western feminism only came about 150 years, 100 years ago. It then went into a second wave, and that is where we have a bit of a contention with them. In the 70s, they first went through a legal, women should have legal rights, which we agree with. Women should have the fair rights in terms of law. Then it went through a sexual liberation. In the 70s, it was all about you can sleep with whom you want, where you want, how many partners. And of course, that is where we say in the Sharia, no. There are laws pertaining to what a woman can do and what a man can do in terms of sexual liberation. Outside of marriage, haram. Inside of marriage, husband and wife, you can go to town, you can do as you want. And both husband and wife has the right to fulfill their sexual needs in a permissible way. That things like female circumcision, haram in Islam. A woman should not be circumcised to remove her sexual desire, to remove the clitoris. We have a hadith about that, subhanAllah. We have a hadith where the Nabi said to the ladies, don't remove the clitoris because it is harmful to her, and it's going to be better for the husband that she enjoys sex later on when she gets married. A woman that is interested in sex is better for him. He's going to enjoy his wife more. So don't remove it. Now we have Muslim societies that say, women shouldn't have any sexual desire. This is bad for her. So we remove all her sex needs, right? But as we said, feminism then went further and further, and it spoke about gender fluidity and that men and women are the same in terms of every single concept and construct. We say this goes beyond what is permissible, and we only say that if we stick to what is the Sharia, then it is best. And I think a question for modernists, the Western feminist movement, is to what end? When is it going to be sufficiently enough? There's a very famous feminist saying that what is a liberated woman? When is a woman fully, in your definition, when is she fully liberated? And they would say that a liberated woman is a woman that can have sex before marriage and a job after marriage. You can have sex before you get married, then you're liberated. And if after you get married, you can still have a job, then you're liberated. He says, subhanAllah, our liberation is confined to our servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you really want liberation, then it is in terms of what the Sharia has given you in terms of rights. That in the modern feminist world, it tells you, put all your energy and your efforts and go 110% for your career. If you give dress up nicely when you go to work, make sure you're there before everyone else, leave last at work, push your career. But if we say do that for your husband, it's sexist. Go extra above to please your husband, to do that for your kids. No, this is backwards. Why? To ask these questions that our philosophy, we don't take from them. We were ahead of the world in terms of women's rights, honoring women. Our societies were the most progressive societies in the world, and it is only because we have deviated from the Sharia, looking at other sources of guidance, that we have fallen backwards. And so I hope in this very, very summarized discussion, we have highlighted the beauty of the Sharia and the beauty of how Islam stands head and shoulders above any other system of law in terms of the rights and honoring our women. We haven't even talking about the spiritual rights, about, you know, a woman is honored, a mother is honored more than a father. When the Nabi says, and subhanAllah, this hadith should really be understood by men, when the Nabi says the best and most complete believer, the person who has the most complete iman, is the man who treats his wife the best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks not just at the number of raka'ahs you're making, or how long your beard is, or how long or how short your thawb is, but what kind of husband are you, is going to be a testament in terms of your iman, your spirituality. So these things, subhanAllah, you know, there's a whole discussion in terms of that. Jazakallah khair, sisters. I don't know if we have any questions or anything I haven't yet covered. I think we can spend another 10, 15 minutes maybe.
Sheikh, somebody asked a question. They asked if Sheikh can please explain the hadith. It's the hadith, I think, in Bukhari. It's about when the Prophet ﷺ told women that he has not seen anybody more deficient in intelligence and religion. Well, that's how it's translated, at least. Can Sheikh please explain that hadith?
Very good. It's one of those controversial hadiths. I did a course for Al-Kawthar, and you can find it in Muslim Central, called The Mothers of the Nation, or the Women Around the Messenger. And what that series did, is about 50 parts. It was, firstly, we looked at, I said, before we go into the controversial stuff, it's important to get the basics. Know who the wives of the Nabi Sallallahu were. Who are they? They are mothers. And so we go through about the biographies of all the wives of the Nabi Sallallahu. Then towards the end of the course, I don't know if you can see the power change to a...
We can still see the Word document, Sheikh.
You can still see the Word documents. Okay, let me share. So I did this course. You can go, and I encourage all of sisters, if you really are, you know, don't just say that you're very in favor of women's rights. Actually go into the depth of it. Go, you know, for me to give a talk on women's rights is meaningless. But for a lady herself to talk about Islam and women, it's far more powerful. There's this course you'll find on Al-Kawthar, The Mothers of the Nation, which talks about all the wives of the Nabi Sallam, their personalities, and really getting to know them as people, because they were, you know, we idolize them in a point where they're like angels. Get to know their arguments, the funny side, the sad side. Some of them worked in the businesses. Some of them were very domesticated. Any type, you can worship Allah in many different ways. But getting back to the question, so after, in this course, one of the things we also did was, after we spoke about the biography of all the ladies, we then went into some of the very dirty, controversial, ugly comments made about Islam. And sometimes hadith and ayat are taken out of context. And we looked at laws pertaining to men and women, and we look at hadith which are found to be a bit complicated. And one of the hadith is this hadith. Right, one of the hadith that is highlighted is the hadith of a woman being deficient. Right, and let's look at the exact wording of the hadith. We talk about polygamy. Why not? Why can a man marry women of the book? Why can a man marry a Christian girl but a woman can't marry a Christian man? So we asked that question. There's an ayah in the Quran that says "Fadribuhun." They call it the verse of abuse. Rather, it is the most abused verse. Right, so there's an ayah in the Quran that says that if a woman does certain things, then hit her. How do we understand this ayah? Surah Nisa, verse 34. Right, so we explain that ayah. We ask female circumcision. What do we say about this? We speak about women and inheritance. Why is it less than a man? Women attending masjid. What is the ruling? There's a hadith about women being bad luck. A testimony being half that of a man. So a woman being from a crooked rib, you all that the lady, she's crooked, she's curved. Most of hell is, so this is the hadith. This is the hadith we're talking about, right? Now let us understand the context of the hadith. It was on the day of Eid. The Nabi was giving an Eid sermon. And the Nabi Sallallahu, he went out to the Musalla to offer the Eid Salah, and the ladies were there. As we know, the ladies were present for not only and so the ladies asked, and again, this shows you the mindset of the Sahabiyat. They didn't say, how dare you say this? Am I still audible?
You went quiet for a moment, Sheikh, but we can hear you now.
So then the Nabi said to the ladies, the majority give charity, because I see many of you, many in Jahannam, not these ladies, but I see many ladies, many people in Jahannam are female. And so the Sahabiyat asked, oh, Ya Rasulullah, why is it so? What are we doing that is so bad that makes us go to Jahannam? And so the Nabi says, sisters, you have this problem. You curse frequently, you swear, you backbite, and you are ungrateful to your husbands. In particular, you don't treat your husbands the way they deserve. Your husbands work, they care for you. Yes, they're not perfect, but you're not giving the due share owed to a husband. And then he says, and this is the part that people come up in arms. What is this? He says, and I have not seen any who are imperfect in reasoning, in reason and in religious commitment, but at the same time more able to rob the sensibility of a sensible man, except one of you. So that he's saying, oh sisters, I've seen. He says, oh sisters, I've seen amongst you the lady, she has he says, you are deficient in terms of in one area of reasoning, there's a limitation that you have, and from a religious commitment, there is some limitation. Yet you're still able to overpower a very good husband, a smart husband, men that are, I give you the analogy. You're on the road, right? The husband knows how to get to the directions. He knows the right way. But his wife says, no, go the other way. And she's completely wrong. She doesn't know anything. And he gives into her and he follows. And actually, it is bad for them. The Nabi is saying this. I have seen, he's like amazed. He's like, I'm amazed how some of you sisters, remember, it's in the context of the Jama'ah he's speaking to here, how some of you are able to manipulate your husbands, even though, sisters, you have a certain limitation with regards to reasoning and in terms of religion. And so the lady said, what do you mean we are lacking from a religious side and from a reasoning side? What do you mean by this, Ya Rasulullah? And so he says to the ladies, in the one area where a man is superior to you, this is one area, is that when it comes to the testimony in terms, as we said, about debt, then you need two women for one man. And in terms of a religious where a man excels over you in terms of his religious commitment, is that he can pray and fast while you don't pray and fast in your haid. Point I'm making, what is the hadith saying? The Nabi is not saying that women, you are inferior to a man. He's not saying that. He's saying, oh sisters, stay in your lane. There are certain areas where a man excels over you, and accept that. And also to men, we're going to have similar hadith about men. We have many hadith where the Nabi talks to the men about women are like this and honoring a woman and giving her rights. So men, there are certain things which the lady has been given preference over a man. I said very clearly, when it came down to disputes of custody, the Prophet ﷺ said the woman has more right over the man. Let's talk about something less contrary. The mother, when the man came and said, who should I give my honor to? And the Prophet said, your mother, your mother, your mother. So there the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying, your mother excels over the father. This is a general statement. It doesn't mean every mother excels over father. You might find in some families, the father is actually better than the mother. It's not in every sense that a woman is inferior, if you want to use that term, from a knowledge perspective than a man. You might be married, if a man was married to a much more educated woman, and of course she excels over him. But the Nabi was talking in generalities. And he must also understand this was a specific khutbah given at a specific time when the women were causing some kind of fitna at that time. And this was a Eid khutbah. SubhanAllah, an Eid khutbah of all things. And if you read further in the seerah, when the Muslims came to Medina, right? Sayyidina Umar tells us this. When the Muslims came to Medina, made hijrah, they said, we found something very strange. In Mecca, the men were in charge of the women, and the women basically obeyed. When we came to Medina, we found that the women were in charge, and they ruled over the men, and the men basically were subservient to them. And so there was this tension that was happening. And then Sayyidina Umar continues, then he says, our women, the women of Mecca, learned from the women of Medina, and they started to overpower us. And so there was the social tussle, and the Nabi Sallallahu gave a little sermon about this issue and saying, oh sisters, you have good husbands. Don't be ungrateful to them. And if they give you guidance, yes, I know you always believe that you know best. Sometimes your husband does know best. So don't overpower him. And you need to acknowledge that you're not perfect. There are certain areas which Allah has made you are going to be less than your husband in certain areas. And similarly, we have other hadith where as a husband, you will be, or as a man, you will be less than a woman. And so Allah has not made anyone equal, or none has not made anyone perfect. And so understand your limitations. And so this hadith is all about that. understand your limitations. I don't know if this answers the question. It is a controversial hadith. It is an authentic hadith. We accept it as Muslims. We say it was accepted, and it was meant and to be understood in that context.
Jazakallah khair for the answer, Sheikh. There is another question, if Sheikh is willing to answer.
Sure.
In today's time, women who prefer to serve our children and husbands are always looked down upon by others because of feminism. How should we respond to people who belittle us?
SubhanAllah, I mean, that is just a narrow-mindedness from that person. I mean, it's sad when the Western society tells you that, you're free to do and choose what you want. But if you choose anything besides what they determine to be good, so you are free to wear whatever you want. So, okay, I want to wear hijab. No, that's bad. You're free to live your life in whatever career you want. If you want to go into pornography, you're free to do so. If you want to go into whatever, it's free to. But I want to serve my husband and my kids. Oh no, that's dumb. So subhanallah, you need to understand that the Western world is biased towards its own way of thinking, and we, consuming the media from them, consuming the sitcoms, consuming the information. Unfortunately, we are, they are ahead of us in other areas. And we acknowledge the strength of knowledge, and they've excelled over us, unfortunately. We will definitely be impacted by their ideology. And as Muslims, the best way to liberate ourselves is to learn. Like this course, it's a fantastic course. I'm not just saying because alhamdulillah, I was part in writing this course, but it's something which really you get to learn about our mother Sauda. So we have on the one side an Aisha who is brilliant. Aisha, mashallah, what I love, Aisha is brilliant in terms of giving sermons, passing fatwa, but she was terrible in the kitchen. When she had to make something, it was a disaster, a catastrophe. And she understood, it was a joke amongst the wives that Aisha just was unable to cook a meal. When she started cooking, the goats would come and eat her food, subhanAllah. Where he had Sauda, our mother Sauda, radiallahu anha, Allah be pleased with her, she was a complete domestic woman. She had no care about teaching classes and politics and fatwa. She just wanted to be there for her family. And alhamdulillah, we're saying that one is not any less pious than the other one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at your profession in terms of your piety. It's how you live your life, And so you can be allowed, like Aisha was very vocal. You can be vocal, you can be public, you can be in the forefront of things and still be pious and modest. And you can be at home in your house, just on your musalla, and that's also very good. So, sisters, what I would say to you, the specific question, look at people who sacrificed their youth, sacrificed their marriage, sacrificed their kids for a career. The minute they retire, they were replaced with someone else. And you ask yourself at the end of your life, everyone must decide for themselves, what is it that I want from my life? When you look back on your deathbed and you had so many, awards on you have a big bank account, mashallah, you have so many awards, in your office because you were the employee of the month. Those are all good things, but is that really worth having lost out on life in so many other areas? And so that is where maybe we come back to where we began. What are the things that are going to count the most at the end of the day? The things that are going to count the most is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you will return to Him. You can be a good person in many, many avenues. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters who make it their priority to care for the people around them. She is the one that picks the kids up from school. She's the one that's sitting with the homework. She's the one. Those people, I must say, I mean, they are unsung heroes. No one gives you an award for making a pot of food, or fetching the kids from school, or looking after your parents when your parents become old and they're at home, and you're the one that has to care for your mother, your parents. No one gives you awards. You get no rewards in this dunya. That is purely for Allah. Whereas if you excel at work, you get a financial reward, you get prestige and status. Some of it some of the blessings get taken away in the dunya. And so we really look at every one of our families have that auntie that has given her entire life for the benefit of her family. And that is something which, subhanAllah, Allah will not neglect. And at the end of the day, at the end of your life, you must ask yourself, what is it I live for? And so live for Allah's sake, live for the betterment of yourself and your family, focus on your act of worship, educate yourself, even if you're at home, sisters. Don't give up your own progression. So maybe I can say to the sister who wants to be at home, yes, it's good to be at home and be a homemaker, and we need those things. But also don't compromise on your own progression. So you can learn. IOU, alhamdulillah, is a wonderful platform where from the comfort of your home, when the kids are out at school, you basically, doing what you need to do, but you're also learning and progressing. And also just to answer, at the end of the day, success is the one who goes to Jannah. And for the lady who works and earns a lot and gives charity and she's on committees, she's on the masjid committee, she's teaching classes, alhamdulillah, fantastic. That's her way to Jannah. For the sister at home, Allah has not discriminated against you. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, a lady who performs a 5 daily salah and fasts the month of Ramadan, and she assists and she is pleasing to her husband to the best of her ability, when she passes away, she will enter Jannah, subhanAllah. So your husband is a means by which you can enter Jannah. Your father, your mother can be a means to enter Jannah. Your kids can be a means to enter Jannah. Your job can be a means to enter Jannah. And conversely, those things can also be a means that we lose out on Jannah. So, subhanAllah, it's for everyone to do what the Sharia has commanded you to do, but then it's given you the flexibility to live the life that is suiting to you. It does not say every woman must be a domestic woman, and every woman must study, and every woman must work. No, it's up to you. You have the right to choose. I don't know if that answered the question though.
So I don't see any other questions coming through. So I know that we ran a bit over time. If she has anything else to add, feel free. But if no one else has any questions, then I think the webinar is over.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. Nothing more from my side. I hope that, alhamdulillah, this hour and a half was beneficial to everybody. You've learned something about the Sharia. You feel more comfortable in terms of Islam and its position of women. That it is, it was a force. It is a force for good, and it was light years and is light years ahead of any other society. We should feel no inferiority with other social systems. And I think the best thing for us, and this goes back to again IOU. The only way we get to know these things is through learning. And so I ask and encourage everyone, join the IOU or join Al Kawthar or whatever, means they are. These questions that you have, the answers are there. And, there are much better people to answer than myself. So please make it part of your journey. The sister asked about what do we do? Learning, knowledge is compulsory on every man and woman. And to continuously learn, whether you are the CEO or whether you are in the kitchen, every single person must continue to learn and be on that path of learning. So please use this opportunity. Al Kawthar, as I said, this book is from Al Kawthar, but IOU, the Student Council, IOU is perhaps the most affordable online university that I know of. So much good is being done through IOU. You can get a fully accredited degree for $100, $120, and so please join up, sign up, see how it goes at your pace. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you on that journey of learning. And my thanks to the appreciation to the student committee and to all those volunteers who are taking up their time to spread the word. May Allah reward you and bless you. Ameen. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for the insightful lecture and for clarifying any misconceptions related to the topic. On a side note to our listeners, Sheikh Muhammad West is hosting marriage classes on a Tuesday evening that is completely online via MSA Union's Facebook page. So feel free to watch the videos because it's very insightful and you do learn about your rights in the process, whether you are a male or a female. And Jazakallah khair for everyone who attended. I really hope that you benefited from this event and I look forward to seeing everyone for our next event, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Wa sallallahu sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam wa salim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Shukran so much. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.